Now, the numbers of South Africans who've experienced violent crime has increased by nearly 20% in the past 5 years. A Statistics SA survey of individual and household crime experiences also show that more citizens are feeling unsafe. For more on this, I'm joined by the Statistics SA Victims of Crime Survey. I'm joined by the Statistician-General Risenga Maluleke. Mr. Maluleke, thank you so much for joining us this evening on News at Prime.
Let me greet you, Masa, and of course, let me take note and acknowledge the viewers at home.
Now, today, another grim picture painted for ordinary South Africans living in a veil of a crime as well. But also, Mr. Maluleke, you quite at length explained the process of coming to this report and this survey and how it was conducted and the sample size of people. If you could briefly explain that to us.
What we do is our household surveys are about 30,000 dwelling units, which is equivalent to 30,000 households. And indeed, once you have taken that, it will depend on how many people you find. In some cases, you find one person. In some cases, you find 2 or 3 people, or even many people. But that gives us a minimum of about 80,000 persons that we usually reach at any given moment. Sometimes we go up to about 116,000. Now, from there, once we have done the computations, we then elevate that to the national population, and we come up with estimates of what our victims of crime or employment in the form of the labor force survey could be. And in this regard, then particularly for the victims of crime, I need to explain that there is a difference between the work that we do and the work that the South African Police Services release from time to time. They are not in competition, but they are actually complementing one another. So let us look at it this way. The South African Police Services, they report on crime as reported to the police stations, and they collate that nationally and break it down by province. In our case, we go to households and we speak to members of the public. So our victims of crime report will include numbers or people that haven't gone to report at a police station level. So that is why you find that relatively our numbers tend to be higher than those that are made available by South African Police Services. And we look at it at 2 levels, Masa. One is at household level. So there are some crimes that do not just affect one person, but they affect the entire household. And usually those are crimes that occur at the dwelling unit or at home. So if there's a burglary, for example, that crime will affect the number of persons that are staying there. It could be 1 person or 3 or 4 or 5 people. And if there's home robbery, burglary is when you are not at home. Home robbery is when you are at home and there's contact with the criminals, or at least there's proximity with the criminals. And indeed, theft of motor vehicle occurs when the vehicle is at home, or if it's parked in a particular area. But then when we go to individuals, in the case of vehicles, we look at hijackings, because when hijackings occur, they are likely to occur at the point where the car is in motion or is in transit. And indeed, theft of personal property, which may not necessarily be at home, things like cell phones, necklaces, bags, and the like. So we separate households and individuals in the crimes.
Yes, and also when you're speaking about your role being to complement and not in competition with the SAPS as well, there were certain crimes that the survey found that people will go to the police and report, such as murder, and then other crimes where they wouldn't go to the police. If you could just take us through those ones.
What we have picked up in the victims of crime is that most violent crimes such as murder, are reported to the police. So while murder, for example, is sitting in the last 12 months, is sitting at about 22,000, and versus the number of was that house burglary or house breaking, which is sitting at 1.5 million. We have picked up that murder is reported at about 100%, and it's because, one, it is shocking in itself. It does affect not only the household, or it also affects the neighborhood and the society. And the law enforcement officers sometimes tend to pick up such incidences. So it is followed by sexual offenses, which are sitting at about 85.9, almost 85% of being reported. And it's because we are seeing the stigmatization of sexual offenses. And the lowest, which also has the highest incidence of crime, house breaking, which is sitting at 1.5 million, but the reporting is sitting at 45%, because sometimes people come home and find that out of the house breaking, things that were stolen are not things that they would want to worry about reporting. But when we go and see them and interview them, they do alert us of such issues. And that is why you may find that in the police records, you may not readily find that. Having said that, in the case of assault, we have found that people do seek medical care and a little of support in terms of counseling. But 100% of sexual assault cases, people seek medical care. And beyond that, those that go and seek counseling are about 35%.
You mentioned that, you know, there are certain criminal elements as well where people don't feel the need or worry about reporting those certain crimes as well. And one that may come to mind is, you know, you had statistics on psychological violence that peaked in the months of February, May and April. And it was the highest in the province of Limpopo and lowest in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Now, psychological violence, I'm assuming, and you can clarify here, the people that you spoke to those crimes about, they probably didn't report that to the police.
Psychological crimes are, it's the first time we are recording that. This is about bullying, sending of text messages, threatening or otherwise undermining or sort of hate messages that may be sent. What we have found, it was not highest in Limpopo, it was actually highest in the Northern Cape, where we were sitting at about 2.5% as a proportion. That is when you look at the population. So if you look at, and let me correct that, it was 2.7%. When you look at the population of the Northern Cape, it is relatively small. So any incidences of such cases will actually be higher. But it was relatively lower in provinces such as Limpopo and KwaZulu-Natal, sitting at about 0.3% in each of those provinces. KwaZulu-Natal and Limpopo, 0.3%. And of course, there are other issues beyond psychological crimes. Let us look at crimes that occur to members of the public in general or to individuals. 46% of the population indicated that the crimes that befell them came from people they know. Either it's a friend or an acquaintance. That is not all 46% of the crimes of assaults. It's people they know. It's a friend or an acquaintance. It's a spouse or an intimate partner, or it's someone in the family or in the household. But it affected women the most. Women were exposed to assault by someone they know at about 33%, 33.9% to be exact, whereas men, they were affected at only 0.6%. It's not even 1% for men. And when you look at where these crimes occurred in the form of assaults, we see that 22% of them occurred at home, while about 49% 0.6%, almost 50% occurred in the neighborhood, residential neighborhood, in the shops or in the offices. Then when we look at those that occurred at home, for women, 40% of women were actually assaulted at home. So you can see that this is a challenge for law enforcement officers because the home environment is space that is largely reserved and it's a place of comfort, and police cannot be able to monitor and manage the home environment. They can only know once such cases are reported. Then we look at reported crimes. When people see someone committing a crime, the first port of call where they think of is calling the police. So we can see that there is an increase in the number of people who are saying, I will call the police. But when they suspect that someone may commit a crime in their neighborhood, they always call the neighbor.
Another crime, Mr. Maluleke, that you spoke of that affects a lot of women in particular, or a feeling also, is just women not feeling safe walking at night, as you're mentioning as well, when it comes to assault cases and a woman being mostly affected by people that they know as well, their loved ones too, but also women not being even safe enough to walk around their neighborhoods.
The measure of safety in any country, our country included, is for people, regardless of whether they are male or female, walking freely, especially at night. And if you want to see that that neighborhood is safe, is when you see women also walking freely at night. So let us look at generally. In terms of persons, whether they are male or female, people who said they are comfortable walking in their neighborhood during the day are sitting at 80.4%. In 2019-2020, they were sitting at 86.6%. So we see that we have dropped by about 6.2 percentage points. So it continues dropping, that even during the day, people are feeling lesser and lesser safe in their neighborhood. Whereas those who were feeling safe at night, it was sitting at 41%. It's now sitting at 34.9%. Actually, it was sitting at 41.6%. It's now sitting at 34.9%. It is declining. So people are feeling lesser and lesser safe to walk at night. That percentage is even higher for women feeling safer to walk in their neighborhood at night.
Mr. Maluleke, thank you so much for your time and your work. Really appreciate it.